tell me your name and spell it?
My name is Terry Bennett. It's Terrybennett.
And on the 56 team, what year were you in school? Sophomore, junior, senior?
I was a junior.
And so tell me a bit about your family. You know, what, now that we're rolling, your dad was a brick mason. Tell me
My
about
dad was a brick mason. My mom was a housewife. I had 7 brothers and 3 sisters. They all worked. I worked. My dad was an alcoholic. He wouldn't pay a bill. If you charge something to him, you just well give it to him because he wouldn't pay for it. So my oldest brother quit school in the 9th grade and went to work, and all through the years until my youngest brother graduated from high school, the older kids worked and gave mother the money to maintain the house with. When I was on this football team, I had 5 brothers that worked in the Frederick Leader newspaper, and I got my first paper out in the 1st grade. I had 90 customers, and when I graduated as senior, I had 180 people on my route, and I'd go to football practice, get out of football practice, go do my paper route. On game nights, my little brother named Jerry, he was killed in Vietnam in 1967, would run my paper out for me so I could go play football on Friday night.
See, Drew, you got a lot to live up to. I mean, this guy's busting his butt here. So let's go back. What was life like for everyone, yourself, include your family, back in the mid-50s?
Oh, we were happy. I mean, you know, our family, there were so many of us that we knew everybody. You know, I knew everybody in town practically because of my acquaintance with the delivering the papers, and I started work for United Supermarket when I was 12 years old, and at that time there was 3 grocery stores in town. But you got acquainted with everybody when they came to town to buy groceries, you know. And but it was hard. We lived in an old 2-story house, and our house burnt 3 times in 2 months. And when I was a senior, my brothers came to get me and said, I was at football practice, and they said, get dressed and come home. We need you at the house. Well, when I got home, the only thing I had left was a pair of tennis shoes, a pair of socks, a pair of underwear, a pair of jeans, and a t-shirt. Everything else was gone. It burnt to the ground. And the reason it burnt was because we didn't have any indoor plumbing. We had water, but we took a bath in a number 2 bathtub. And I've told this story many times that I was so glad when I got to be in the 9th grade where I could play football, because I could take my showers at school, and I didn't have to take a bath on Saturday night in that number 2 wash tub. My mother would heat we had a kerosene stove that used the bottles, and you fill a gallon jug, a glass jug up with kerosene, and then you flipped it over and it dripped in a little tube, and you lit the tube, and that's what you cooked on. You know, that was your stove. It was a kerosene stove. And Mother would heat the water, and it didn't matter if you were a senior in high school or my youngest brother 3 years old. She stayed in the kitchen with you while you were taking a bath, heating water, pouring fresh water in that number 2 bathtub. But once I got to be in the 9th grade, well, of course, I started taking showers at school.
So did you have an indoor bathroom, or was
No, sir. We had an outhouse. I've dug many an outhouse. I'll tell you kind of a sad story, and it's funny, but my brother named Marion, he's 4 years older than I am. We were digging an outhouse, and we were just about shoulder deep in the outhouse. Well, my brother Donnie, that's 2 years older than I am, he came out and started pushing the dirt back in on us. And Marion we called him Beaver. Beaver said, Donnie said, I'm gonna hit you right between the eyes with this pick if you don't quit that. Well, he backed off, and just as Beaver come up with the pick, Donnie looked over and he hit him right between the eyes with that sharp end of that pick. And of course, the blood just flew everywhere. Well, we took him to the house, outhouse about 50 yards out in the field from the house. And it was a two-holer. We had a concrete floor in it, but we had two doors and two holes, you know. But anyway, we took Donnie back to the house, and Mother wrapped his head up. We didn't have a car. We wrapped his head up with towels, and I pumped him 2 miles to town, to the doctor. And when I got to town, it looked like me and him both had had a blood bath. He was bleeding so bad. But
Some story.
lot of things like that went on in our family. You know, big families, you have a lot of stories you can tell, you know.
How did you get to school? Ride a bike, or did you walk, or?
We walked or rode a bike. First bicycle I had, I was in the 3rd grade. I had an old maid aunt. I had 2 old maid aunts that went to work for an oil company in Houston. And Christmas one year, they bought 4 brand new bicycles and brought them up. Well, I didn't know how to ride a bicycle. So I rode Donnie's bicycle till I learned how. And when I learned how to ride a bike, my bike was still new. Well, his was all scratched up and everything. Well, he wanted to ride mine.
Hold on for 1 second, Terry.
We've got to change.
Gotta change.
SD cards.
I'm gonna start you at that point right there. Most your family still around this area?
I've got a sister that lives here. Well, she's staying with Donnie in Oklahoma City. She's sick now, but she stayed here. I think she was over at Duncan as a parole officer for 4 or 5 years, and then she came back and went to work out here at Fryland, the car manufacturing deal out there. She worked for them I don't know how many years before she retired from out there. And then I've got a little sister. Her husband was retired Marine. He died. He brought my little brother's body back from Vietnam when my little brother was killed. They were 40 miles apart over there. And at that time, it was September 16, 1967, when Jerry was killed. Well, at that time, my next oldest brother was the production manager for the Broken Arrow Ledger newspaper. Well, his boss was the campaign manager for David Hall, which was the governor. Well, he told his boss, we knew that Royce Sisson was my brother-in-law, told his boss that he wanted Royce to bring Jerry home. So his boss called David Hall. David Hall called the Pentagon. The Pentagon called Saigon. They went out in the field and picked Royce up in his combat gear, flew him into Seattle, Washington, give him his new dress, Marine greens, and sent him to San Diego. And it took us 31 days to get Jerry back. I've got pictures at the house. My son-in-law has been working on this book about Jerry's life in the Marines, and there's a man named Bob Ferguson that lives in Seattle that was Jerry's buddy. They went all through officer school at Quantico, Virginia together, and flight school at Pensacola, and he's written a book. It's called Sometimes Chicken and Sometimes Feathers. Well, he's got a chapter in there about Jerry and his adventures in the Marines, you know. But my son-in-law, he's got everything you can imagine about my little brother.
I'm recording. I'm gonna set that card up.
So we're good?
If that red light, if there's a blinking, just press this button again to start. Okay, I'll be right back.
All right, Terry, let's go back to, what it was like. Did most, you had to walk to school?
Walked or rode a bicycle. Yeah.
Walked or rode a bicycle. Was that
And
most of the
later,
players?
later on in the years, of course, I had friends that had cars in my later, in high school years, so they'd come out and pick us up and bring us home. And my brothers, my parents never did have a car. I bought their first car after my wife and I were married for about 6, 7 years. But my brothers we always had at least one car. But one of my brothers or sisters on one of them, a car.
Was it like that for most of your teammates as far as like the plumbing and outhouse and everything?
No, not really. Well, I guess, as far as I can remember, I'm probably the only one that didn't have indoor plumbing when I lived I was in the poor part of town, over in the northwest part of town. I went to a little school. Of course, school's gone now. It's called Emerson School. But as far as I remember, well, no, Dale May was on our team, and but they had indoor plumbing. He lived over on 7th Street. By the way, he went on to become the treasurer for the Southwest Baptist Association after he got out of school. But as far as I know, I'm the only one that had outdoor plumbing,
Yeah.
Back then.
Well, let's talk about the football team now. How was it to play for Coach Wild?
Great. He was funny, but he was tough, but he was fair. I mean, if you could play, you could play. If you couldn't play, if we got ahead, he'd let you play. But he told us at the start of the season, he got us all together in a circle, and he told us, he said, we're going to eat as a team, we're going to practice as a team, we're going to go as a team, and we're going to come back as a team. The best players are going to be the ones that play. And he picked out his team that first day that he thought would be the starters on the team. But the top team we had back then, nearly every game, everybody got to play. We probably had 4 of the fastest people in the state of Oklahoma in our backfield at that time.
And what did you play?
I played guard. I played right guard, and I played defensive nose tackle.
You're tough as nails.
Well, I was. I thought I was the meanest guy in town,
Did you find out you weren't?
Well, I hate to answer that because I never fought a fight that I've ever lost. And I used to fight a lot.
Fight in high school?
All the time.
But you never fought with any of your teammates?
Yeah, I did. Jerry Edwards, over a 10-cent water gun. We went down one day, and I didn't have any money. And Jerry bought some water guns. And of course, we were across the street over here at the Dairy Bar. It's called Dairy Mart then, popped out of Dairy Mart. And we were squirting everybody. Well, I thought it'd be funny to squirt Jerry. So I squirted Jerry and made him mad, so I had a ballpoint pen in my shirt pocket. And he reached and jerked it out of my pocket and tore my shirt pocket. And me and him went at it for a few little bit. And a couple of the older teammates, this was when we were sophomores when this happened. But anyway,
Were you a senior on the 56 team?
I was a junior.
Junior.
Yeah. But anyway, 2 of the seniors separated us. We shook hands and came over to the gym over here, and I bloodied his nose, and he washed the blood off of his nose, and we were the best of friends all through school again. We did a lot of things together. I was telling a story in there about one time we saw this bootlegger hide a suitcase full of whiskey under a bridge, and we went down and got it. And this was our senior year, and Jerry was married. He'd already gotten married, and we got this 3-suiter full of half-pint Jack Daniels out from under the bridge and passed it out to all of our good buddies, and it was on a Saturday. And I got kind of hooched up and run out of whiskey, so Jerry and Sue had a little apartment, and I went over and banged on the bedroom windows and woke them up and kinda made Sue mad, you know. She shoved the whole suitcase out the window and told me to get rid of that stuff. She didn't want it back in that house anymore. But, you know, Jerry and I were really good friends. We,
Did you drink any during high school, during any of these games, or?
not during the games, no. No, no, sir.
But it's come Saturday night, or?
Well, you know, I won't say I didn't drink. I drank beer, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Back then, all the kids, well, I say all the kids, I didn't. I kind of had a unique situation, I feel like, because I could run with the rich kids, or I could run with the poor kids. And I had, you know, Ouija and Danny, and they were from families that had good jobs, and they always had money in their pocket, but they didn't drink. Well, then I was raised on the west side of town, and some of the guys that I was raised with over there, well, their dads drank, and there was always something available, you know, so I drank too. But thank God, I found out that that wasn't the way you need to go, and I got saved, and I don't drink, I don't cuss, I don't fight anymore, I don't gamble. I used to gamble. When I was at Walters working United, I raised fighting chickens. And of course, everybody thought that was cruel, you know, but I made a little money doing it, so I did it.
My first film, the first film I ever directed was on cockfighting.
Yeah,
So I know that world pretty well.
yeah,
This is all around Tennessee and Kentucky,
yeah.
down in that area.
I lived at Walters at that time.
Yeah.
We fought at Chickasha. The deputy sheriff up there was our guard at night, keep the trouble down.
Mhm.
And of course, it was supposed to be illegal, you know. Wasn't supposed to be any gambling going on or anything, but
The first time I went into a place, it said no drinking, no cussing, no smoking, no fighting except by the chickens, except by the roosters. You open the door, smoke flew out. The sheriff's standing there with a beer in his hand. Everybody's cussing and smoke, and it was a, you know, there's fights, all that stuff. It's
I killed a man over a rooster fight one time. We had some black roosters that we didn't know anything about. We'd bred them to a cock that was untested. And we had a good hen. We knew the hen was, you know, dead game.
Mhm.
And, but our cock wasn't tested, so we took a 5 cock show to the pit, and you know yourself how a cockfight, the last one to peck wins the fight, you know.
Mhm.
Well, they'd fought for about an hour, and finally our rooster couldn't raise his head and peck, so we lost the fight. Well, he was dead game. I mean, he didn't run or he didn't cow down or nothing. He was a dead game rooster, but he just didn't have the strength to peck anymore. But anyway, we took him back to the cock house, and I was holding the rooster, and my partner was cutting the steel off of him. And this Indian boy just kicked our cock house door open and went to cussing and wanted to know where that blanketed blank rooster was, and he had lost $1 on him, and he was going to kill him because he couldn't fight no more. And when he did, I hit him right under the chin and knocked him out of the cock house. And he had on an old big sweatshirt, and I jerked it up over his head, and I got him down on the floor and was banging his head on the concrete floor when the deputy pulled me off of it. But over $1, you know, he's gonna kicked our door and was gonna kill our rooster because he'd lost $1. It
Wow.
cost us about a $3,000 derby, you know.
What? How would you describe the 5016? Like, if you could put it, you know, into a sentence, what are your thoughts on that team?
Well, you know, when we first found out that we were going to be integrated, I'd never had any interaction with the blacks, you know. They lived on their side of town, and the only time I ever saw them was carrying out groceries for one of them or seeing them in the grocery store and things like that. But I worked part-time for United while I was in high school too. And
So you worked with the blacks back then?
yeah, we had, we had a black, what we call a porter, Shorty. He cleaned the floors and carried the trash out and whatever, you know. But once we found out, and Coach had the team meet and tell us, you know, like I said a while ago, we're gonna be a team, and the best players will play. Well, then he put us in pig in the poke, if you know what that is, put us all in the circle and best man win, you know. But anyway, after we got the team formed and started playing, and it was very, very competitive, you know, because I wanted to play, and Charles Shaw wanted to play, and Jerry Edwards wanted to play, and we all played guard, you know. But I never heard honky out of one of them, and they never heard nigger out of me, you know. And you never heard it. We never had a fight that I can recall between any team member. We were just a bunch of young men wanting to win. And I don't know whether anybody's told you this or not, but when we were in the 9th grade, of course, we had an all-white team. And we went undefeated that year. And of course, that was when the black teams were winning the state championships in high school. You know, they won three before we won this one as a mixed team. But I've drank out of the same bottle with him on the, you know, out on the field practicing. We had one water faucet, and everybody drank out of the same water faucet. And at the game, we had a water bucket, and you drank out of the same dipper with them, you know. And there was never any controversy as far as that, you know. And I've laid my head on Clarence Bird's shoulder many times coming home from ball games, singing those songs that they taught us, you know. And everybody did, you know. It was just, there was no animosity between any of us. I never saw anything like that, you know. Like I say, we were just a bunch of kids, and we wanted to win. And everybody accepted their role on the team. And consequently, we had probably as good a football team as there has ever been in Frederick. And you can look at our scoring record, and 500-something points against 26 points in 14 games is pretty dominating, you know. But there was never, as far as I know, any animosity between the players. Now, I'm not saying we didn't get mad at each other on the field, you know. I mean, if I thought you hit me too hard or hit me from the back or something, well, I'd get up and say something, you know. But as far as fighting, never no physical fighting. And no cussing, no name calling, you know.
But the community was different. I mean, did you hear?
The community, and of course, we didn't know, as players back then, like I said, we were just a bunch of kids playing sports, you know. We wanted to win football. And we didn't know, we found out later that we had a couple of white boys that were on the team that quit because their parents wouldn't let them play with blacks. And we found out, or I did, found out a few years later that there was a lot of the businessmen in town wouldn't support the team because of the mixed race, you know. But I think in our state championship game is what really brought the town out of the dark ages, because we were playing Oak Bugley Dunbar, which is an all-black team, for the state championship. And we were beating them. And we looked around, and they had one of our black players down in the end zone beating him up. There's 3 or 4 of them on him down in the end zone after we had scored. And the fans climbed over an 8-foot fence and were out on the fields fighting. Blacks, whites were fighting the Dunbar fans. Our coach was out on the field fighting. The players were fighting, and took us I don't know how long, good while to get them all separated and everything. But I think really, to me, to seeing the black fans and the white fans coming over them fences out there defending a black player, you know, I really think that kind of galvanized the community to an extent. You know, of course, you're always going to have people that will never accept change, you know. But the next year, we went to the second round of playoffs, and we had the support of the blacks and whites. Well, you know how Bomber Bowl is. You probably filmed it. It was full. Every Friday night we played out here, it was full. And most away games that we went to, we had more followers at the ball games than the local town would have.
On those games, let's go back, one more question about this fight. So was Coach Wild fighting too?
He was on top of the pile out there, right among us.
Was he going after the players, or
Well,
was he going after the coach?
I was pretty busy at that time. I just know he was out on the field.
Were you
Him
on?
and J.D. Norton both was out on the field. J.D. Norton was assistant coach. And Bob Collins, you interviewed him, he was out on the field. He was just kind of a fill-in, come-and-go coach, you know. When he got time, he'd help coaches. But that's the only coaches we had.
So when you were on the field when the fight started.
Yeah.
So did you immediately go towards the fight, or did you just look across the line and see?
No,
the guy
we
you were-
ran to the end zone to get those guys off of L.C. Perry. Because they had him, like I say, that 3 or 4 of them had him down back there, and they was working him over pretty good. And it took 3 or 4 to handle L.C. Perry, because he was one tough dude now. But once the bench and the players rushed to the end zone, well, then here come their players, you know.
How big were you in high school?
I weighed 175 pounds.
And how big was LC?
Oh, I don't know. LC probably weighed about 180, 185 maybe. He wasn't. We didn't have any big people on our team. I think probably the heaviest man on our team weighed about 220, something like that. You know, which is a midget now.
Yeah. So
But we had a lot of speed. You know, we had, our linemen were fast too. And of course, we had, like I said, probably four of the fastest running backs in the state at that time.
when you look up in the bleachers, was it segregated?
Most of the time it was. Later years, it didn't, it wasn't. But, early, the blacks would mainly sit on the visitor side, my recollection. And the whites would sit on the home side, you know. The blacks would usually sit on one end of the visitor side of the stadium.
Did that change once you guys started winning a lot?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They started sitting on the home
Oh,
side?
yeah, yeah. But they were still mostly segregated because our schools weren't integrated. And early in the season, the town really hadn't accepted it, you know. So and I don't know, I'm just saying this out of my own personal thoughts, but I feel like that the blacks really felt kind of intimidated, you know, because mostly whites in the stands, you know, and a lot of the blacks players, folks, work for white people, you know. So at that time, they felt like that they needed to stand their place, so to say, you know. But later on, I think, and you can look at Frederick now, I mean, it's all mixed, but at that time, they didn't know, no blacks lived north of Highway 5. No blacks lived east of the railroad tracks. They all lived in the southwest corner. The only time they crossed the tracks was to come to town to buy whatever they needed to buy, or to go to work as custodians or maids or farm hands or whatever, you know. But they stayed in their area, and the whites didn't go down in the black area, you know. That's just the way it was back in those days.
Finally, one last question. Can you describe the 1956 team in one word?
Probably cohesive, togetherness. We believed in each other. I know that's more than one word, but we really thought we could win when we went on the field. We didn't go to lose. We went to win the game.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay,
This is,
Well, I appreciate you guys coming, and,
That was excellent, man.
yeah,
yeah,
that's wonderful.
You're very well spoken and enjoyed hearing your stories.
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I've never been noted for keeping my mouth shut.
Well,
I've always,
Good for you.
you know, a long time ago, a man told me, he said, say what you feel and feel what you say.
mhm.
And I've never forgotten that.
Yeah.
Yep, and sometimes it's gotten me in some spots where I wish I wasn't in, but
Well,
I
I'd
said
venture
it.
to say it serves you well, sir.
Well, I appreciate it, thank you. Thank you guys for coming and.
Oh, of
and
course.
Hope this goes to the top.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well,
Well, it's quite an honor for us.
Yeah, it's an honor.
yeah, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Next. Next.
Did they get everything they wanted?
How was that one?
Great.
Was it really?
He was just great.
He
Boy, he
is a
told the story about how the opposing team got LC out on the field and
Was
fighting
he?
them.
In the
Yeah.
championship game against.
There was
Yeah.
still a
Dunbar,
story
yeah.
there. We'll have to see.
Please.
You guys, if this get off the ground, can I have a cameo?
Of course. Of course you can.
Okay.
Do you need any water or anything?
No.
Okay.
He's gonna ask you for your information, just so we have it
Okay.
written down.
Don't mind, can I get your phone number? Effie, E-F-F-I-E,